Thank you for joining us in Finding God in the world of video games, and Happy New Year to you if you're watching this when we're actually recording it and displaying it. If you're watching it later, I still hope you had a Happy New Year. I didn't mean to be late. I didn't know you were coming. So what we're going to talk about today is how we measure kind of the value of a video game. For me personally, I've measured games in a variety of ways over the years, but there's always been one constant in my video game value system. And as I would take a game case and slide it into the bookshelf for the final time, my last reflection would often be a very, I suppose, crass but practical observation. Do I feel like I got my money's worth out of this particular title?
Right, especially since games are now $70 in comparison to their $60. I feel like that's an even more relevant question now than it ever has been.
Certainly. And a lot of times when I'm debating the merits of video gaming with some of my unappreciative friends of the video game medium, a lot of times I could just point out that as a measure of enjoyment per hour, a $60 or even now $70 video game is still a vastly superior investment to spending $15 for a movie ticket, or even, $15 to $20 for buying and owning a Blu-ray disc. Why? Because these games would carry anywhere from dozens to hundreds of hours of unique content compared to the much lower 1 to 3 hours that you would get out of a cinematic experience. And, like a crazed mathematician, I would argue my point with buzzwords like replayability and alternate endings and entertainment value per dollar spent. And win or lose, I would typically end up leveraging the length of the game as a core differentiator between the superiority of games to other non-interactive media.
But what about if someone would bring up their own personal ace in the hole, such as, like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, or, those are just, I've never read them, they're too long for me, or, any other lengthy book, or video-based content that is clearly a massive amount of bang for the buck.
Well, even in those cases, I've always had a secret weapon that could demolish even the thickest of tomes. And that game was Elder Scrolls Oblivion. The amount of time I personally put into it was easily over 300 hours. And honestly, at that point, I just stopped counting. And the funny thing is, Elder Scrolls, it's not even a genre of gaming that I had previously appreciated before the first time I tried Oblivion. I'm, as you probably know, if you've watched any of these, I'm more of a sci-fi guy. But the sheer volume of content, this monstrous open world, the huge amount of choices and options that existed simply grabbed hold of me and didn't let go until the Shivering Isles expansion was finally completed. I mean, for me, that was the first game I had ever gotten every single achievement in. And when I finally put Oblivion into that game case for the last time, that was honestly my new standard bearer for all future gaming experiences. I would use it as the measuring stick when I bought another game. I said, this was pretty good, but, it's no Elder Scrolls. I mean, I beat it in under 30 hours. And for years, I expected my games to have not only the depth and creativity that we saw in Elder Scrolls and its subsequent titles like Skyrim, but enough length to justify my purchase for the weeks and months to come. But then something changed.
You mean when they finally announced that Mass Effect Trilogy remaster that you've been talking about for years?
No, not that. But also, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely that. But no. But seriously, so here's just keeping it real, the combination of being a husband, becoming a parent, taking on higher level responsibilities in my job, because believe it or not, this is not my job. I make literally no money off this. It's costing me money to do this right now. But also just writing and recording these articles and videos, it started to leave a whole lot less time on the table for my gaming hobby. I mean, I still love playing games and spending time in the remarkable worlds that have been generated for me, but to be honest, I don't really have the option to sink 300 hours into one single game anymore.
I wish we did.
That'd be nice. I mean, there are a few exceptions that exist from time to time, but honestly, my taste nowadays is decidedly a little more compact, and I'm much more appreciative of short games and some of the indie titles that now exist, simply because I have a much higher chance of, actually completing that game. Games like Tacoma or the Untitled Goose Game, one of my personal favorites. Inside. Any of those kind of games, I actually get to play the game all the way through to the end.
Barely with Untitled Goose, though. Barely.
Well, that's because I kept getting distracted and just wanted to keep torturing people.
He really did. It was ridiculous.
It's very good. Just so you know, if you made that game, you can just send the check to me directly. It'd be fine. I've been advertising you a lot.
He
You think they're watching it?
No. I don't think anyone
House cares. All right. So anyway, my concept of value has very much changed as a result. And in my current station in life, honestly, I would rather pay $15 to $20 for a 3 to 4 hour experience that I will actually finish, rather than $60 for hundreds of hours of probably very compelling content, but I'll probably never get to experience it or see it anyway.
Well, I mean, it's $70 now.
True.
But it would be easy to make a simple generalization regarding the shift in priorities that we all experience in our life as our station of life changes. But like any good Transformers commercial, there is more to this than meets the eye. Stick to the script. The truth is that this is more than simply a matter of having increased responsibilities as we grow older. It also hints at a spiritual truth that was revealed many thousands of hours of gameplays ago. From the guy that has battled his fair share of giants in the open world, King David.
Now, I would assume that most of us are familiar with the infamous battle between David and the giant Goliath.
I would hope so.
Which was the beginning of that young shepherd boy's official military career. But, interestingly enough, David's final recorded battle with a totally different giant, not quite as widely known. David's career as a soldier was effectively bookended with 2 epic boss fights. One really, really well. The other one, not so much. And it could be that, when you say David and Goliath, that just kind of rolls off the tongue a little. You can see that, on shirts and marketing and stuff. But if I said David and Ishbi-Benob, I have a feeling that, it's just not a very marketable name. Nobody wants that shirt. No one's going to have that bumper sticker. And honestly, I had to Google it to make sure I was pronouncing it right.
What is it? Ishbi-Benob?
Ishbi-Benob. Absolutely. He's already had his name said more times this year than in any year prior. But I don't even think it's about the name is the reason most people haven't heard of it. It's probably more about the way the battle ends. So in 2 Samuel chapter 21, verses 15 through 17, we see this story, David's final battle as an active soldier. It talks about David going out against the Philistines, because who else would David fight? That's pretty much what he did for most of his years. But then it says, Ishbi-Benob, who was one of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose bronze spear was 300 shekels, was bearing a new sword, thought he could kill David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, came to his aid, struck the Philistine, and killed him. And the men of David swore to him, saying, You shall go out no more with us to battle, lest you quench the lamp of Israel. Now David had entered this battle the same way he had many times before, but this time obviously things went quite a bit differently for the aged king. David engaged the same Philistine army that he had previously dispatched with ease, led by yet another giant, and he's, as we know, very well documented in his ability to take down giants. So David could have been forgiven for feeling a little bit of a sense of deja vu as he entered this fray, but this was not his battle to win, and David was not suited for this particular round of mortal combat. His story was about to end at the point of Ishbi-Benob's massive spear when Abishai swooped in with the proverbial wrestling hot tag, tagged into the match, and saved David's life.
Now, David was still the anointed king of Israel by the Lord with a large destiny to fulfill, but his days as a soldier at the forefront of the battle were way behind him. Even David's loyal soldiers recognized that this particular phase of David's life was not only in the past, but that he was risking his critical role as the king by engaging in battles that belonged to others now. His role had changed, and while killing enemy giants was still very important to the continued protection of the kingdom, it was now a job for Abishai and the other soldiers in the Israeli army to finish that work for him. David was responsible for leading the people from the throne, and he had to leave the battlefield to those who were just beginning their military careers.
I'm always excited to hear about the massively long and epic gaming blockbusters of the future. I love watching those trailers, and I get as excited as anybody about them. But I know at this stage in my life, those battles are often not going to be mine to fight. Those adventures belong to the next generation of gamers, or maybe to those who are in a better position to spend all of their gaming time in only one gaming conflict. But in order to continue to write and record these articles and videos, I have to ingest games in bite-sized chunks just so I can relate to the topics, and I rarely get to finish the meal as a result. And if I want to keep, my actual paying job, as well as be present in the lives of my family and my friends, I honestly don't get as many opportunities to play as I once did. All of these games, the long ones like Elder Scrolls and the short ones, they have their place in the gamer's library, but they're only the correct fit for each one of us depending on our current needs and goals and our position in life.
The same is true in terms of how God uses us. John the Baptist may have understood this better than anyone. For a time, he was the most well-known evangelist on the planet.
Yeah, we don't even know his last name. His last name was the Baptist. So, yeah.
This is kind of interesting how we don't know his last name.
Didn't need to.
But he was the one human being entrusted with baptizing Jesus Christ and setting up his ministry for success. But as Christ's influence and outreach grew, his older cousin John's ministry began to evolve into its next iteration.
And John didn't cease to have value to the kingdom, but he was reaching his sunset point, and the most important thing that he could do now was ensure a successful transition of his disciples to the king whose path he had been trailblazing for years. And you saw that in John chapter 3, verses 26 through 30. When John's disciples came to him and they said, the guy that you baptized, that guy that you were talking so much great, stuff about, everyone's going to him now. What about our ministry? And John said, I said, I'm not the Christ. I've been sent before him. He is the bridegroom. I'm the friend of the bridegroom. And I'm rejoicing because he is here. The joy of mine is fulfilled. He must increase, and I must decrease. John the Baptist understood that as the Lord takes over our lives, he also dictates our path, both to the top of the mountain as well as down through the valley. King David had been a vital soldier in the army of the Lord. He had led multiple successful military victories, but he had to move on to the next part of his calling and understand that while both the role of soldier and in king they're both important, but his time as soldier had ended if he wanted to fully inhabit the role of king.
And the Lord does the same with each of us, moving us from one station in life to the next, with the expectation that we understand there is equal value in each of these areas. But we don't get to choose which season we are in or, which order they may come in.
Absolutely. And it's David's own son, Solomon, the wisest that has ever existed. In the book of Ecclesiastes, he expounds on that further by the infamous selection of scripture that talks about how to everything there's a season. Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 8. Everything there's a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant, a time to gather what has been planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down, time to build up, and so on. The so on part isn't in the thing? No, there's a whole song to it though if you want to listen to that. So perhaps your current season in life is not necessarily to your liking. Now, maybe you love the season that you were previously in, but you're not enjoying the uncomfortable and unwanted transition into the next one. Many times I've found that I don't always appreciate the season I'm currently in until I'm in a new one that I enjoy even less. So the good news is that none of these seasons are permanent, but they do all serve the larger mission we have been called to, regardless of whether we are occupying the role of a frontline soldier, king, a trailblazer like John the Baptist, path marker. As long as we remain obedient to the Lord's call on our lives, he will ensure that each season serves the unique purpose it was designed for.
Now, there is a season for long games and for short games, for deep experiences and just casual ones. To every game and to each and every one of us, there are many seasons. It is up to us to submit to the will of the one that set each of these seasons in place, as he gives us the wisdom to gracefully move from one to the other, while understanding the importance and value of each and every